I wanted to share with you two things I felt the Lord show me at the start of this COVID season, which prophetically really spoke to me about some of the Lord's purposes in the midst of what is happening in this really unusual season that we find ourselves in. And He reminded me of two different but interrelated things I had heard about. And one of those was of a time in the 70s where actual engineers had stopped the flow of the Niagara Falls. I've never visited the Niagara Falls, but I understand they're majestic falls, and the actual volume of water that actually goes over the falls is meant to be astounding and breathtaking, which is why millions of people visit each year to actually see the falls. But in the late 60s, I believe it was, the engineers were concerned that actually the falls were going to actually break apart and retreat, and they didn't want that to happen. And so what they did was that the engineers got together and actually dammed the flow of the river and diverted the flow of the river for a season, which would allow them to actually investigate the falls and to see where there are fault lines that they could deal with. And they managed to do what they set out. They managed to stop the flow of the Niagara Falls for a season. When the surveyors got to the base of the falls, they found indeed that there were these fault lines that had begun to appear, which they were able to actually strengthen and put bracing around. And they also found actually that there was a ton of debris at the base of the fall, and some of it was unwanted debris. And they found things that they never knew were actually at the base of the fall. Apparently there were skeletons of people that used to barrel ride and try and ride the actual falls. They found the bodies of a number of these people at the base of the falls. And the Lord reminded me of how in this season where they stopped the flow of the Niagara is in many senses a parable to us of what the Lord is doing in this COVID season, that the normal flow of life has actually been diverted and stopped, and it's just a season, but it's a season that the Lord is going to use to actually begin to address fault lines He otherwise couldn't address in our lives or in our churches, in our ministries, in a way that actually brings strengthening and bracing in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I found in this COVID season that actually the Lord has been actually pinpointing things in my life, in my ministry, the way we do church, the way I think about ministry, that I wouldn't have excuse me, I wouldn't have been able to think about otherwise if this COVID season haven't actually happened. And so I believe there's an invitation for us personally and as ministers to actually lean into this season where God as an engineer is helping to expose things in our lives that are weaknesses that during the normal course and flow of life we wouldn't see. So that was the first thing the Lord showed me. The second thing that He showed me, He reminded me of how in ancient times where one of the shepherd's sheep would be hurt, the shepherd would actually carry the sheep on his shoulder. If a sheep damaged its leg, the shepherd would actually carry this animal over his shoulder until the animal's leg was repaired. And Jesus talks about this very thing in one of His parables, where He talks about how the good shepherd carries his sheep over his shoulder. And the Lord spoke to me about this, how this is a time in which for many of us, the Lord has actually drawn us into a deeper place of intimacy in our lives, where literally the normal walk of life has been interrupted by the COVID season. And it's a season where for many of us, God is saying, let me carry you. Let me pick you up, and actually you do not need to bear the weight of your normal ministry at the moment. I think for some of us, I really felt the Lord was saying at the beginning of the COVID season that there was an invitation to allow the Lord to carry us and to rest. And so, yeah, I just want to deposit those two parables, modern day parables for you. And I wonder if the Lord might be speaking to you and saying, actually, that's you. That's some of what I want to do in your life. I want to address things that I've been itching to, but it hasn't been the right season for it. But this is the right season. And then also alongside just growing this deeper intimacy with him, where actually God is drawing us as closer than ever before in this season, where he says, let me carry you in a way that you've not known me to do.